Marilyn Manson. If you don't know him from music or acting, you know him as the guy that removed one of his ribs just so he can suck his own. I don't know who made that rumor up. I don't know why it was made up. And I'm not too sure why the first time I heard it was in 3rd grade. I don't even think you hit 10 yet at 3rd grade. But hey, it was a thing, and it's a thing that wasn't true. Manson has been in plenty of controversies, from being the one to blame for the Columbine to this album cover where he's naked but has lady parts. By the way, it's been confirmed that the shooters didn't even listen to Marilyn Manson, just so you know. Today we're going to talk about his past experiences with women. And trust me, it gets really dark. Allegedly. It all starts in 1998. The Long Hard Road Out of Hell autobiography by Marilyn Manson just came out. And this autobiography featured a number of anecdotes, which Chicago Reader critic Jim DeRogatis called him out for at the time. Generally mistreating one or more women per page in this chapter called Meet the Fan / Meet and Greet. Manson recalled a time where a deaf fan was covered in raw meat, had sex with multiple band members, and then Manson and another fella pissed on him. And I guess Jim's voice wasn't loud enough because this is some disgusting. Manson said that encounter was consensual, but another anecdote features the guy from 9 Inch Nails, Trent Reznor. And this is the story that stirred controversy at the time. Allegedly, Manson and Reznor physically assaulted a drunk woman in the 90s, and so many other stories came out on Manson between then 1998, where he self-snitched in this book, and now in 2023. I think more people definitely should have called out Manson on his when this book dropped, but hey, maybe they were reading with their eyes closed. I don't know. But let's hard focus on the era where Manson got the most heat, which was 2019. After Evan Rachel Wood testified in court, the Phoenix Act was passed in California. This basically requires police to get additional training in domestic cases and also increases the amount of time you have to legally do something about a domestic case. And Wood's story is crazy. Listen to what she had to say.
Toxic mental, physical, and abuse, which started slow but escalated over time, including threats against my life, severe gaslighting and brainwashing, waking up to the man that claimed to love me, what he believed to be my unconscious body. And the worst part, sick rituals of binding me up by my hands and feet to be mentally and physically tortured until my abuser felt I had proven my love for them. In this moment, while I was tied up and being beaten and being told unspeakable things, I truly felt like I could die, not just because my abuser said to me, I could kill you right now, but because in that moment I felt like I left my body and I was too afraid to run. He would find me. I froze, and it was as if I could see myself from the outside, and for the first time in months, I felt something, utter shame and despair. I had no idea what to do to change my situation, so I went numb, and soon I couldn't feel anything. I wasn't alive. My self-esteem and spirit were broken. I was deeply terrified, and that fear lives with me to this day.
Now, at the time, we didn't really know who Woods was talking about, but what we do know is Wood and Manson had a on and off again relationship at some point. They started dating around 2006, and that means Wood was only 19 years old at the time, while Manson was in his late 30s. Brother, if your girl is 19 and you're pushing 40, it's weird, man. You're a creep. That's weird. But 2 years later in 2021, she actually decides to name drop Manson and say that earlier testimony, the story we heard coming from her mouth, was allegedly the relationship between her and Manson. Things got worse and even more weird when she dropped more information on Instagram. She's saying how Manson groomed her when she was a teenager and he brainwashed and manipulated her for years. Another survivor that goes by the alias Sour Girl on Instagram also came out with some allegations. Oh wait, look at that. So did McNeely Sarah. Oh wait, and look at that. So did Ashley Lindsay Morgan, almost as if he's a serial creep. Here's an overview of all three stories. Sour Girl says that she met Manson in 2015 at a show. He was 46 and she was 22. They talked, and after his band played, he invited her to their tour bus. Who wouldn't want to go to this rich, successful Goth Daddy's tour bus? I would, and I'm not even gay. She states that he love bombed her almost immediately, saying things like, it feels like we knew each other for years, basically manipulating this girl. He tells her to take off her clothes and hop in a shower in front of him. And I think it's important to note, thus far, it seems like everything is consensual. Then they hang out again because he invites her to the show the next day. So then they go to a hotel room, and this weirdo breaks a wine glass in front of her. He then demands to do a blood pact together. He uses the glass shard to cut both of their hands. Then during the next 2 weeks, they hang out a ton. They talk all night, and she even meets his father at some point, and he even tells her that he loves her, even though it's been 2 weeks. That's not weird at all. So he invites her to a tour in Europe, and boy, oh boy, this is when it gets messy. She agrees, but seems to regret it pretty soon after. This seems to be the darkest point of this girl's life, because now, not only is she trapped with him, but she's trapped with him out of country. Like, imagine if you're trapped with someone in your state or even your country, you can like run away and call someone. When you're out of country, you can't do who you gonna call? You don't even got signal there. He then starts doing psycho like tying her up and her. He takes naked pictures of her while she's asleep and for some reason sends it to his friends. And he even forced drugs on her. She ended up overdosing and the paramedics had to pull up. The paramedics goes, dude, we gotta take her to the hospital ASAP. And Marilyn Manson says no. He refused. At some point, he locked her in a room for 24 hours that he liked to call the bad girl room for punishment. I'm not too sure what the punishment was for, and that's also a really cringy name to call a room, but she's in there for 24 hours with nothing but her cell phone. She then states how controlling he was, not even letting her change her own hair color. He makes fun of her for being partially black. He starts throwing shit at her like he's a caveman. And she goes on to let us know that he's overall one of the worst human beings on this planet. And she got so bad that she's even attempted. Survivor number 3 is Sarah, and she has a very similar story, stating how he lured her in with love bombing. Very similar to Sour Girl. He also put her in the bad girl room, but she would have to sit there and listen to him entertain other girls. He would tell her to stay away from specific friends or else he'll go after them. And people have told Sarah stories that others that try to come out with these stories against Manson ended up with dead pets. There was a point when he told her to stay away from other artists in the same set because they all had AIDS, and Manson would be very upset if he found out that she was around them, and she definitely didn't want him upset. Quick note, I'm sure none of them had AIDS. He was clearly just afraid that she'd go run off with another artist. How about you treat him good? Then they don't want to leave. I don't know. A crazy suggestion, I guess. There was a point when he started getting physically violent, pinning her up against a wall and threatening her that he's gonna bash her face with a baseball bat. And she even states that this weirdo recorded people that went into his house as blackmail in case he ever needed it. What the f? The fourth and final survivor we're going to be covering out of so many is Ashley Lindsay Morgan. I think this is the most interesting case. You'll find out why later. So while she was in Thailand, she was contacted by Manson because he wanted to work on a project together. They chit-chatted and she was like, wow, he's really kind and smart. They start texting for a while and he goes, hey, how about you come to LA? I'll fly you out. I want you a part of my film and photo series. And he was extremely supportive of her acting career because she's like, hey, I want to get out of modeling, and he's just a supportive guy. He makes her feel very safe and secure. And pretty quickly, she goes from living to a hotel to living in his house. And also very quickly, things got really dark. He was really controlling and gave her rules that she had to follow, and she would get in trouble over behavior he didn't approve of. And also similarly to the last girls, there was physical and abuse. And this is definitely one of the weirdest things I've heard. She would fly back and forth from Thailand. He would ask her to bring back memorabilia from World War II that was hidden in Asia. So she would bring him like swastika throwing stars, knives, rings. And guess what? Shorty's Jewish. It's so weird how he asked her to bring back these items and she's Jewish. He says he only dates Jewish girls. And you know what else this goober would do? If she fell asleep too early, like 3 a.m., he would kick her out of the house with close to no clothes. Either that or wake her up with extremely loud music. She wasn't allowed to eat, sleep, or leave. She even claims that he would cut her, he would burn her, and they did this thing where he would put his fist in her mouth. Like, what the f? And I know there's so many people out there that don't like to believe in the victims and the survivors, even though there's clearly a pattern in Manson's behavior here. Like, these 3 stories are pretty similar. So if you don't believe any of these girls, Let's hear it from this guy that was very close to Manson, Dan Cleary. Dan worked really close with Manson while he was in the relationship with Wood. He says that in a course of 1 year, Manson completely changed Wood. He turned her into a different person and broke her. Then between 2014 and 2015, Dan worked for Manson as a personal assistant. And he saw firsthand Manson being violent and abusive to his girlfriend at the time, which was Lindsay. And he said throughout the years of working with Manson, he saw Manson just be a complete dipshit to Lindsay. He would watch him scream and belittle her more often than he didn't. He would threaten to kill and hurt her, make fun of her disabled family member. Dan states that Lindsay fearing Manson made Manson feel really good. Dan also goes on to say that he liked Manson a lot. He was very funny, he was entertaining, he was talented, but at the end of the day, he was a very big drug addict and abuser. Dan says everyone in Manson's circle knows about all this abuse stuff, but they can't say anything. They're forced to stay quiet if they want a job in the music industry. And the reason why I personally believe Dan is because he said it himself. He has nothing to gain out of telling people this. In fact, he has so much to lose off of saying something like this. Manson ends up replying to all of this and says that all of this is made up. All of his past relationships were with consensual and like-minded partners. But it's super weird because someone did an interview with Manson, and when they brought up Evan Rachel Wood, he hung up immediately. He never wants to talk about these rumors publicly. But fast forward to February 2023, things get really weird. Ashley Lindsay Morgan comes out and says that the entire story that she put out, the story I told you guys, is untrue. She said that she was manipulated by Evan Rachel Wood and others to tell this story. What? Huh? Excuse me? So you're telling me that the guy Dan that literally saw you get belittled by Manson is also a liar? So now it's so weird, because did Evan Rachel Wood also manipulate Dan? Did Manson pay off Ashley Lindsay Morgan to say that? What is going on? Like, it actually doesn't make sense. And this entire thing is still ongoing to this day, because a few months ago, Evan Rachel Wood, she actually gave up custody of her son out of fear for her family, because allegedly Marilyn Manson threatened her. Now, if you listen to any of the bands or musicians mentioned, you probably know of the scene's most hated musicians. Go check that out and see if you know who I'm talking about.